All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of the Remarkable Coach podcast. As always, I'm your host, Micheal Pacheco. Today with me, I have James Rodgers. James is called the #1 thought leader and leading strategist for diversity management and diversity and inclusion, also an executive leadership educator and spiritual teacher. James Rodgers, welcome to the Remarkable Coach.
Thank you, Michael. It's my pleasure to be with you.
I appreciate you making time for us. I always like to open up this podcast by simply inviting our guests to tell us a little bit about yourselves and why you got into coaching.
Well, let me start from the time that I started my corporate career. I came into the corporate arena as a fast-track executive in the old Bell system. I'm a graduate of Howard University, which is an HBCU. So I came in with a lot of confidence. I came in with the belief that I had something of value to add to the world. And I had a very good career there. I actually made it to top management within the prescribed time, spent a lot of time going from department to department. So I really understood what it took to run a major corporation. So that tends to be my playing field is, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, because I know the landscape real well. And coaching people in that environment just feels very natural to me. So I spent 17 years there and later started my own consulting firm. Didn't have any idea what I'd be doing, just knew that I had some ideas that I thought would be of value to people. So I did total quality management. I did career enhancement. Got into diversity management in the early 90s. Right after it had first started, happened to be a friend of the founder of the diversity movement, Dr. Roosevelt Thomas, and adopted a lot of his philosophy. And because of my connections to the corporate world, I was able to go in and speak the language of the C-suite and get them to understand that this is not sociology, this is about enterprise performance. So to your point, the thing that happened, I've worked with over 300 C-suite teams. So what happens usually is while I'm consulting with them, giving advice and counsel, I also wind up coaching many of them. Mm-hmm. So that's really how I really got into coaching 30 years ago, not directly, I'm going to be your coach, but while consulting, giving advice and counsel, coaching became a natural. And as you'll hear from me later, I'm not a certified coach. I don't coach because I trained to coach. I coach because I'm a coach. That's just who I am.
I love it. I love it. And you're in that transition, was there something about being specifically in, let's call it corporate America, for lack of a better phrase, that were you disillusioned by that and you wanted to make more impact? You thought you could make more impact as a coach, or was it just kind of a natural progression from point A to point B?
You mentioned in my introduction that I am a spiritual teacher, so I rely on that foundation of ancient wisdom quite a bit. So it so happens I had a great career. I was a fast track executive. Everything was looking good, and I got awakened in the middle of the night while I was in New Jersey. It just says
that'll happen in New Jersey.
Huh?
That'll happen in New Jersey.
It will, So while I woke up and this voice in my head says, you're doing great, but this ain't it.
Yeah.
And so I made a transition over the next year and a half. I came back to Atlanta with the intent of starting my own consulting practice to find out what it is. I soon did, but I was never going to find it while I was under the banner of any corporate banner. So I had to make the hard choice, and I did, and never looked back. And the good news is, since I did that, I will tell anyone I haven't worked a day since, because I enjoy what I do. I just get up every day being me, and somehow everything just comes accordingly.
Love it. I love it. I love anytime anytime you can hear a story about someone who follows the nebulous calls of the heart.
Yeah.
You don't exactly know where it's going to take you. You don't exactly know where you're going, but you know that wherever you're at that time, it just doesn't feel quite right, and you're going to try something else and see if that feels better.
Yeah, I encourage all of the people that I coach to experiment with that. I know it's a little tricky and sometimes a little scary,
Mhm.
but all the people that I have talked to who have really achieved great things in their life have learned this whole idea of let go and allow things to go the way that they're going to go. So, I believe everything happens the way it's supposed to. So when I believe all of us are called and gifted and led to do something special in the world. And when you find it, go for it 100%. And those who have, seem to do okay.
Mhm.
I was listening to one of my great teachers early on in my career because I listened to a lot of the old guys, Zig Ziglar and those guys.
Sure.
And one of them told me the importance of just following your calling. And they said the top 1% of anything you do in the world gets paid very well. And the only way you're going to be the best in that top 1 to 5% is to do what you were called to do. And so I will tell you, I left corporate America and I've been highly compensated for just following my calling. And so I feel that was good counsel.
Nice. That's great. That's great. Tell us more about who your current clients are. You mentioned Fortune 500, Fortune 1000. Are you working primarily with leadership teams? Are you working exclusively in the C-suite? Who exactly are your clients?
My target audience is primarily VP and above, C-suite executives. Like I said, that's where I come from. While I was in corporate America, I had the privilege of working with near the top of the house in just about every assignment I had.
Mm-hmm.
When I moved to New York, I worked for Bill Ellinghouse, who was at the time the number 2 guy in all of the Bell system. Mm-hmm. He was the president of AT&T. When I came back to Atlanta, I worked directly with John White, who was the vice chairman of Bell South. And before that, I worked with, the CEO of South Central Bell. So I've always had access to the top of the house. So I knew what life would be like if I got there. Mm-hmm. And I discovered one thing. Those are some really exciting, fun jobs, but the people who were holding them were not happy.
Right.
And my quest in life is not to be rich, but to be happy.
Sure.
And so when I got the calling, I said, there's always trade-offs, but let's see how this works. And it worked out quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your goal in life is not to be rich, but to be happy. Why not both?
Well, it turns out you get both. But one of the things that I'm telling people in a lot of my presentations now, there's an old piece of ancient wisdom that says, seek first the higher goal, and then mm-hmm. all of the secondary goals will come with it. Mm-hmm. And so even as we look at the work that I'm doing in diversity, I tell them diversity is a relationship discipline. Seek that first. And with that, you'll get better representation, better recruitment, better retention, and a better corporate reputation. But if you seek any of those things first, you're not going to get any of them. But if you seek first to get people to move past the artificial barriers to relationships, you'll get all of those things to come along with them. So the answer is, I chose the quest for happiness, and in the process, I've done quite well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah. I love this a lot. James, I'm not going to lie. It's really resonating with me because I come from a similar background. When I was 19 years old, when I was 18 years old, actually, just right out of high school, I started working at Intel as a software engineer and worked in corporate America until I was 26 or 27, when I finally realized how unhappy I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where I wanted to go. And I left. I was a musician for a while. I was a bartender for a while. I went back to school and I ended up getting a degree in Japanese language and literature, going to university in Tokyo, and moved back here to the Pacific Northwest, started my own business, having nothing to do with any of the previous stuff that I've done. It was just, like I said before, you're kind of just following these like nebulous calls of the heart and not really knowing where it's going to take me or where I'm going to end up. But if you do that, I believe that the quote you mentioned, seek first the higher goal, I mean, that's beautiful. Mwah, chef's kiss. It's so good.
So here's the thing, Michael. Um, when you approach life that way, what I have learned is that everything in your path is part of your path, and it
Mhm,
will lead you to where you're going. I call it connecting the dots.
mhm,
So if you turn back and look at all of the events of your life and you look for when was I at my best, if you start connecting the dots, it will tell you this is where you are and this is where you're going, because the
mhm.
dots do align. And they
Sure.
tell you, okay, this is why you were put here. Do
Yeah.
this. And you'll never work a day in your life, and you'll be highly compensated for just being the best you possibly can be. So I believe in that. I want to go back to one of your other questions you asked. One of the things that I'm doing now that's a little different is I'm a director of an executive academy for the IT Senior Management Forum. And I took that position because all I've ever really wanted to do is to help others achieve beyond their own beliefs and their own expectation.
Mhm.
So I'm working with a group of highly talented technology executives who have aspirations to know whether or not they want to seek a C-suite job. So my job is to prepare them, to let them know what that life is like, what it takes to get there, and to disabuse them of the notion that I got to be the best technologist that I can in order to get there. Because it's not about, this is where the intersection of the work I'm doing in diversity comes. It's
Mhm,
really not about how good you are technically. It's about the quality of your relationships when you get to that level.
mhm.
The same thing is true about executing diversity management inside organizations. It's not about all of these different dimensions of diversity. It's about relationships. How do you move past the artificial barriers to relationships so that you can be with the people who you need to be at your best in life and to help you succeed in life? You never know how that person is going to be packaged. So
Sure.
you can't be triggered about, oh my God, he doesn't look like he's from my tribe, or he didn't graduate from the same school that I did. Those are artificial barriers. What you should look at, spend a little time, find out what you have in common with that person. And all of those differences that you see, they won't matter so much, because now you'll know this person was put in my life for a reason. I'm going to go for it and see what we can accomplish together.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of the path, right? If you're following your heart, is you have to be open to whatever's around that corner, because you don't know. For me in my path, it was a very strange thing to go from corporate America and earning six figures to being a bartender for
Yeah.
years. I did that.
Yeah.
And it just, I can't say anything about it other than it was the right thing to do at the time. And
Yeah.
it was perhaps a step backward that I needed in order to get to where I am now.
Yeah.
And you don't know what that package looks like when you do that.
Yeah. But you do know in the moment that whatever you're doing there that's not on your path is not going to get you to where you're going. So, it's like it's an easy choice. This is not going to get me there. Maybe this will get me there. So let's go ahead and pursue it. And as I look at your story, you look back on it, being a bartender, you might say, what's that got to do with where you're heading now? You learned something. There was something in that experience that taught you so that you're a better you now than you would have been had you not had that experience. And
Hmm.
that's why I encourage people to go back, look back, connect the dots. What
Yep.
were you doing? It's not about the vocation itself. It is about who were you being at that moment, and what did you learn about yourself that says, I am ready to be fully me now.
Hmm. Yeah. For me at the time, I was learning about people.
That's it.
I was
That's it.
learning about people.
Yes, yes. I
Uh,
say to people all the time, my life journey is really about studying and understanding human nature.
mhm.
And everybody puts all these labels on. He's the diversity expert and blah blah blah, etc. But fundamentally, all I do is collect wisdom from ancient wisdom sources and understand human nature, so that I am not judgmental of anybody in terms of what they do or where they are. I try to understand it from the standpoint of, if I were in their shoes and had the same life story as them, it is likely that I would be doing the same thing. So I
Mhm.
have to understand rather than to judge, rather than to denigrate. I choose to educate.
Mhm. I love it. Talk about ancient wisdom sources.
Well, I grew up in the Christian tradition. and have that, that was a good foundation for me. But of course, I have looked at all of the other great wisdom traditions, the Tao and the Bhagavad Gita, the Buddhism, Hinduism, and all of those things. And of course, my conclusion, having looked at all of them, they're all saying the same thing. So basically, ancient wisdom teaches us that there is a truth. In fact, one of my second book was called Finding Truth Without Losing Faith, because so many people get disillusioned with their faith tradition that they say, oh, this ain't working, so I'm just going to chuck it all and look for truth. Well, if you look deeply inside, if you look past the church and look deep inside Christianity, you'll find out that the truth is there. Just as if you were to look into the foundational principles of Buddhism, the truth is there. You look at the foundational principles of Taoism, the truth is there. So what you're looking for, I used to be a big fan of Karen Armstrong, who is a religious historian. And one of the things that she did is compared all the religions. And she said, it all begins with this one fundamental truth. And that is what we call the golden rule. Most of us in the West believe the golden rule was first put forth by Jesus of Nazareth or Rabbi Hillel in the first century. The first person to say it was Confucius in China. Okay. And every other faith tradition has basically used some version of that. If you want to be treated good, treat the other guy good. If you don't want to be treated badly, don't treat the other guy badly. Foundational principles of what I call love, which to me is an active verb. It's not a sentiment, not a feeling. It's what you do. It's not how you feel. It is not, the titillation. It is what you do. So that's the foundation of my spiritual principles, is to reduce it to the simple. Yeah. And once I reduce it to the simple, I can never judge anybody based on their belief system, because to me it's just as valid as mine.
Yeah, judge them based on their behavior, right? I mean, that's
absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff. Let's circle back real quick and talk a little bit more about your clients. Where do you get your clients? How do you market your services?
Poorly. So I tell people all the time that I am a great salesman. If you put me in front of someone who needs my service and we have a gentle conversation like you and I are having, I have almost 100% close rate. I suck at marketing. And I just discovered, one of the reasons that I do that is because, and this is true of many coaches, and you'll find this, Michael. Many coaches, we are reluctant at self-promotion, reluctant to promote ourselves. And so, interesting enough, you know that I'm a friend of Marshall Goldsmith, who's the world's #1 executive coach. So I was just before you and I talked, I was just on a private webinar with Marshall, and he reminded me of the logic of being more, promoting yourself more. He says, Jim, would the world be better off if more people heard your message? Sure. I said, clearly. He says, is selling yourself make you uncomfortable? I said, yes, it does. He says, so here's the choice. Is it better for you to make a difference even if it makes you uncomfortable? And I said, you got me. So I don't do good, but I've been fortunate enough that my work in diversity has sustained me for over 30 years. I don't reach out to anyone. Usually when I call people, they think I'm trying to market to them. I say, I haven't vetted you yet. How do you know that I would even work with you?
Right.
So I've been fortunate enough that when a client is really serious about the work, they'll call someone and say, who do you know? Who should I be talking to? And my name quite often comes up. So I've sustained my career and my practice for 30 years using that pattern, which has allowed me to, like I said, work with over 300 different companies, probably over 200 different C-suite teams, coached over 100 C-suite executives privately. Fortunately, that's been the path. I tell people the only marketing I know how to do is I do good work. Yeah, that's it.
I like it. Are you going to consider doing more, putting yourself out there more, maybe on social media or something, thought leadership, that sort of thing, because of what Marshall said today?
I am.
Yeah.
See, Marcia said something to me probably 7 years ago that really, honestly, upset me with him. He was doing a presentation and he was talking about his journey. And he says, and I decided I was going to be famous.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Marcia, that, a good Buddhist like you, why would you say something like that? That seems kind of self-serving. You're going to be famous. Well, over the years, I've put it together.
Mm-hmm.
Your fame gives you access to more people.
Mm-hmm.
The very idea, your message needs to be heard. Sometimes in order to get your message out, you need some fame so that more people will hear your message. So I have always been reluctant to put myself forward. I'm not the one that raises his hand first and says, ooh, ooh, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
I really kind of told people, and, I'm almost ashamed to repeat it, but I say, if you get serious about the work, you'll find me.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes there are opportunities for me to put myself out there and say, hey, guess what, folks? When it comes to this, I'm without peer. I'm the best there is. And here's the examples to demonstrate what you get when you get me. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at ways to do that more proactively, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to admit, it still makes me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I resonate with that too. I struggle to promote myself sometimes. I had a sales coach not 2 months ago tell me that if I am able to help someone and I don't tell them about what I do and how I can help them, I'm doing them a disservice.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's an interesting way to frame
Yeah.
sales marketing, right? It is, if you can genuinely help someone and you don't reach out to them and let them know, hey, I can help you with this. I can make this easier. I can make this better for you.
Yeah.
Might be doing them a disservice.
Yeah. So I'm in the process, as you know, of promoting my new book. And part of this promotion is going to be putting myself forth more. I'm doing sessions like this. I'm doing webinars. I'm doing speeches with different organizations. I'm actually going to reach out, believe it or not, Michael, I'm actually going to reach out to a list of 100 CEOs and tell them I am what's been missing in your thought process.
Love it.
So, we'll see how it goes. It's going to be uncomfortable, but this message that I'm promoting now is so, so important for individuals, for business, and for our society that I've just got to make myself uncomfortable and do it.
James, while we're making you uncomfortable, let's talk a little bit about your new book. Tell us all about it.
It's entitled Diversity Training That Generates Real Change, but it's subtitled Inclusive Approaches That Benefit Individuals, Business, and Society. So while our publisher insisted that we focus it on an aspect of diversity and inclusion, that is training, we were able to really tell the whole story. Why is diversity and diversity training getting a bad name? Because it's being done the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what gives us license to say that? We've been doing it for 30 years and we've seen it work. We've had the privilege of watching people have cathartic epiphanies right there in the classroom that changed their life, changed their perspective, changed the way that they showed up. That's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about teaching people some obscure academic principle like critical race theory or anti-racism or any of those things. It's about an individual getting in touch with their own selves and understanding this is what triggers me.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I got this way. This is how I got conditioned to believe that this is the right way to be.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm being introduced to another way of looking at it, that's something I need to consider. Not so that other people will see me as better, but so that I will selfishly be a better person and have better outcomes in my life. And I tell people all the time, and they wince at us, say, you have to do this work with a selfish motive.
Mm-hmm.
Your selfish motive is, how good could I be if I got rid of some of the baggage that's keeping me from having the right types of relationships at work, at home, and in society?
Mhm.
So my co-author and I, Laura Kangas, and I, we put it out that we're just bold enough to believe that we can make a difference by getting this message out. So we are on a campaign now to do that. And the power of the message, Michael, I think is what's going to get me out of my shell and allow me to tell more people.
There it
I'm what has been missing in your plan.
is. I love it. I love it. I love it. This is great stuff. This is great stuff, James. Tell us about cathartic epiphanies. That sounds like a big thing. Give us more.
Yeah. So the way what part of the magic of what we do in the classroom is that we opt not to instruct, but to facilitate.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if you know the difference between facilitation and training. Training is instruction. You know, I know something you don't know, and out of the goodness of my heart, I'm going to share it with you.
Mhm.
Facilitation is a subtle process. We even call it the Zen of facilitation, because it is about helping other people find their truth, not giving their truth to them, helping them to find it. Facilitation is the art of asking quality questions.
It's almost
And
like it feels like you're kind of describing the difference between coaching and consulting, right?
absolutely, it is.
Instruction is consulting, and facilitating is more along the lines of coaching.
Yeah, and like mentoring, you know, people, you have a mentor. A mentor knows something that you don't know. They know the culture, they know the process, and you go to them to find out that information. A
Mm-hmm.
coach basically gets out of you what you already know.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things that Marshall said today in the webinar is that coaching is not about fixing losers.
Mm-hmm.
It's about helping winners. It's about helping winners to be even more effective.
Yeah.
So I'm very clear about when I take on a coaching client, I want someone who's really, really good at what they do.
Yeah.
And I want to help them find those blind spots that keep them from being consistently excellent at what they do, because all of us as human beings, we all have blind spots and things get in the way. I want to help them figure that out and move past it. So that to me is what coaching is all about. And that's why I love the concept. And like I said, I'm grateful that I discovered that part of me, that's the value that I bring to the planet,
Yeah.
and want to do it for more people who can benefit from it.
I love it. I love it. What does it look like in terms of, let's say in terms of tactical methods to take someone in a workshop that you're in a facilitation workshop or whatever you would call it, and bring them to this, quote, cathartic epiphany where they're now like challenging their beliefs that they had when they walked in, and those beliefs are being challenged, and they're like, oh, I get it. What kind of things do you do to help facilitate that kind of growth?
Yeah. It's called interactive training. And what it basically we do is we disarm them first. The first exercise in the day is to disarm them around believing that they know everything. So we give them a simple exercise in which they catch themselves. It's not me telling them that you missed something. They catch themselves missing things.
Mm-hmm.
And our message to you, that's part of the human nature. That's part of the human condition, is that sometimes we see things and sometimes we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So once we get them into that mode, we just give them, we have a learning model that's called discovery, implications, and application.
Mm-hmm.
Experience, discovery, implication, and applications. So my job as facilitator is just to invite you to an experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we give them a bunch of things. We have them read some material. We have them watch a video. We have them play a game. And my observation is, so what are you learning about yourself as you go through this? And they have the conversation. We create a safe space for them to have that conversation and to share as much of it as they're willing to share. There's no requirement that they share.
Mm-hmm.
But quite often, people will catch themselves at a table with people who are not like them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the discoveries is, wow, we have more in common than any of our differences. I never knew that.
Mm-hmm.
What I love is the epiphany when people are with people who they see quote unquote see as different.
Mm-hmm.
And when they discover, wow, we all have the same frailties, we all have the same needs, our same wants, and wow, your dad hunts there too. Wow, mine does too. Oh, look, you go to my church. I didn't know that. You went to such and such elementary school. We used to live there. Those little things, it's little things that trigger a connection. We call them seeking similarities, figuring out what we have in common that overcomes this natural process that we call reactions to differences.
Mm-hmm.
Left to our own devices, the old brain back here will always try to protect us. So they see someone who's not of our tribe. It goes all the way back to cavemen. When they see a saber-toothed tiger, the first reaction is that, hey, he doesn't look like one of us. So I think I better flee.
Mm-hmm.
And that has translated into modern society. So we have to have tools to help us work past this natural reaction to differences so that we can get to the place of saying, wow, you were a bartender? Man, let me tell you what I learned while I was a bartender. And now, no matter what differences are obvious or inobvious from us, we've got a basis now for a relationship that allows us both to be about helping each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we have had, just so many examples of that. I tell the story of a young lady in a company actually in Birmingham, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very touching story. I'll call her Ruth, but I was in a session with Ruth and doing all these exercises, people were opening up and telling things about how they have grown and how they have decided to put some of the baggage that they have aside. And Ruth got up and said, and Ruth happens to be a Black female. She says, something, I am so glad, happy to hear all of y'all having these epiphanies, but I just can't go there. I'm trusting white people. And here's why. She said, I happened to be on the Edmund Pettus Bridge the first time that we tried to cross it. And I saw white policemen beating Black people who were just kneeling, praying to their God, and they were beating them. And he says, that's indelibly etched in my psyche, and I just have a hard time getting past it. Mm-hmm. The good news was the group, I insisted that they be silent and say, Ruth has some work to do. Let's let Ruth do her work. Mm-hmm. The next morning, she came back in, and after thinking about it, she said, you know something? I have to report to you all, I can change. I see now how that has handicapped me in my work, mm-hmm. and I'm going to move past it. And so that was a great hallelujah, and we moved on. And the good news is we don't do that just for the emotional catharsis. Yeah. Ruth was a superstar.
Yeah.
But her superstar status couldn't be revealed until she let go of that baggage.
Yeah.
And from then on, she became one of the top performers at that company. And it's all because she, was able to get past that. So there are many stories like that. We have senior executives who were Vietnam vets, could never say anything about it because of how they thought they would be responded to. I've come out of the Vietnam era, so I sympathize with that. Mm-hmm. You all are baby killers and drug addicts and blah, blah, blah. Those are the labels get put on them. And so most of us don't talk about it a whole lot. Mm-hmm. But until you release that hang up, you're never going to be able to be at your best. So mm-hmm. Those are kind of examples I'm talking about. And the key to it, Michael, is that everyone, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, ability versus disability, any of the dimensions of diversity, we all have a story. Mm-hmm. We all have something that is a potential barrier to our relationships. We need a process by which we can come to grips with it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be public. You don't have to come out like Ruth did, but you do have to have the internal introspection that allows you to say, that's getting in my way. I got to get rid of that. Mm-hmm. I hope that's helpful.
That's wonderful. No, I think, it sounds like you guys are really, what you're doing is helping people rewrite personal narratives that are not serving them.
Absolutely.
Right. I want to be clear.
That's exactly the language. That's not serving them well.
Right.
That's the selfishness that I'm talking about. Be selfish about it. Be a better you, show up in a better way by just understanding you and what triggers you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I want to I want to clarify something. The coaching that you do around diversity and in all of its meanings goes well beyond just race.
Oh, I don't talk about any dimension of diversity. So this is about human to human connection.
Yep.
So if race comes up in the classroom, it's because somebody in the classroom brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
Laura and I are very strict about that. We don't bring any of our personal issues into the classroom. We are there as a guide.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a Sherpa guide doesn't say to you, you know, I'm going to take you this way because I used to have an aunt who lived up here, and I remember, they don't have a personal agenda. They are just the guide to take you down a path so that you can figure out who you are. So we're very deliberate about that. I don't speak about race. She doesn't speak about gender. We don't talk about sexual orientation. But if it comes up in the classroom, we create space for people to have honest conversations about anything.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super important. And I think, I mean, that's another phrase that I really like is creating space, right? When you're having these delicate conversations, when you've got people who are opening themselves up and becoming vulnerable in ways that they've never done before, they're challenging previously held beliefs, they're rewriting these narratives that are not serving them well. You've got to you've got to facilitate that.
Absolutely. That is precisely the language. You have to facilitate that, and you do that by expert crafting of the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
You listen intently. You feel where the person's coming from. You kind of empathize with how difficult it will be for them to pose the question. So you help them pose the question. Mm-hmm. What if? How would it be if that? What would success look like? What would happen if you did this versus that? Mm-hmm. And you pose those questions and give them room to examine it and then to express it. But one of the things we are encouraged to do, we're not there to educate people and to fill their head with information. We're in there to facilitate learning. So there's a process. Information gets converted to knowledge, not because either teacher made it into knowledge, because you accepted it as knowledge as the student. Mm-hmm. That knowledge converts to learning. It's learning because you say there's something here that I can use. Mm-hmm. And that learning is what creates behavior change. So our objective in all of our work is to create behavior change. Mm-hmm. And by the way, guess what? That is the objective of good executive coaching. Exactly the same thing.
Yes, it is.
So that's why I tell you, being living an integrated life, everything that I do is kind of the intersection of all of these disciplines. Mm-hmm. Classroom training, executive coaching, coaching and the consulting on diversity and inclusion. It's all the same process for me.
Yeah, I like it. Nice. Can you talk a little bit about how this training and coaching that you do translates into ROI, right? Into some kind of like bottom line? Like, how does this translate into forward momentum and ROI for the company?
Absolutely. Better people make better teams. Better teams get better outcomes. And a firm's performance is the summation of team performance. Mm-hmm. As you can tell, I'm an engineer. I'm a geek by training. So, logic means a lot to me. Mm-hmm. So that's what we have seen and have helped organizations to realize actual bottom line benefit by starting again with the bigger thing. Create an environment using your managers so that your teams don't look past the relationships that they need to be at their best. Mm-hmm. They start performing better. That team starts performing better. It creates output. What happens, interestingly enough, Michael, is one team starts to outdo all the other teams, and the other managers come to, man, what are you doing?
What are you doing that I'm not doing? What are you doing different?
What are you doing that I'm not doing? You know, just hook a brother up, you know, give me some of that. And it starts to spreading. And one thing that most people don't realize, my work is about focusing on frontline managers. It's not about getting the executives. The executives, I want them to understand it intellectually so that they will allow it. But the actual benefit happens on the front line when you have managers. As a matter of fact, my thesis, my dissertation, my PhD dissertation was on that very idea, how frontline managers practice, not talk about, but practice diversity management to get better results. And the good news is sometimes you don't have really good managers. You don't have to teach them to do this. This is just something that they know. I've got a team of people. I got to get the best out of all of them in order for us to be at our best. And so let me figure out how to do that. And part of that figuring out is helping them to get past those artificial barriers to relationships. They just figured that out. So part of what I'm doing is teaching executives what they could learn if they just walked around with some of their very best managers.
Yeah.
They teach them the same thing.
Yeah, because it's the middle management, right? Director level and below that are spending time with the people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
you learned that from being a bartender, didn't you?
Yeah. 8 odd years in corporate America helped too.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. But it's all part of the path for you to enhance your understanding of how this world works, which goes back to the ancient wisdom. All ancient wisdom is about trying to figure out how this world works. By observation, I see, ooh, this seems to be a truth. Ooh, this seems to be a principle. That seems to be a principle. And when you collect them all, you wind up with the faith tradition. Yeah.
But are you just a quick aside? Are you familiar with the Upanishads?
Oh yes, I am.
Okay, that's a great one. That's one of my favorites. I like. I'll just flip open to a random page there and just read
Good
a little.
stuff, isn't it?
What's that?
I say it's good stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. I love that. I love your you're kind of, how do they say, like, you're eating your own dog food. You're really open to different stuff. Grow up as a Christian, not afraid to look at other theologies to see what you can learn from it. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I'm most proud of as a coach and a teacher is for 7 years, I facilitated a group south of Atlanta, was called an interfaith group. In this group were traditional Protestant Christians. There were Christians of the Orthodox tradition, Catholics. There were Jews. There were Muslims. There were Buddhists. And there were at least 4 atheists. We all studied together. And it was my privilege to talk about issues that affect us all, to use all of these different sources from wisdom traditions and create an environment where no one was right, no one was wrong. We're all still just human beings trying to do what all religion does, trying to figure out how to navigate this thing we call life. And to me, it's been one of the greatest experiences of my life to see this principle that I have, that we're all saying the same thing. So when you get people who are firmly entrenched in different faith traditions and set them down together, and we can work on the same things without putting your beliefs down or my beliefs down, I just think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm beginning to understand a little more about what you said at the beginning of the podcast. You don't have the credentials. You're just a coach. That's who you are.
That's what I've discovered. Now, interesting, Mike, you know, I started calling myself coach, not because I said, oh, that looks like a good title. It's because my clients started calling me that. I'd be working with clients on career advancement or anything like that, and a CEO will walk in. Oh, there he is, the coach. So what do you mean by that? I don't get it, you know. But people have seen that coaching gene in me for as far back as I can remember, especially in my corporate career. I think I saw on your promotion for this, you were talking about the time that I was playing volleyball with one of my teams that I was managing. And I just couldn't help myself. I just say every time the ball came, I said, okay, dig, set, spike.
Get it done.
Every time it just came out of me naturally. And what I find is whenever I'm working with executives, I find the blind spots. I find out what is really getting in their way, and it just leads me to start asking questions to get them to discover what I just saw.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah.
James, can you talk a little bit about imposter syndrome?
Wow. This executive academy that I work with has just clarified that whole thing for me. I coach people of all ilks.
Mm-hmm.
I've coached male, female, black, white, all of them. Senior executives are rife with this idea of the imposter syndrome. Here's what it looks like. Wow, they got me in this big falutin position here. Got a title that makes me a big muckety muck. But any minute now, someone's going to come and figure out that I'm not as good as they think that I am, because we're operating out of our own sense of who we are. So I have to help people to understand you don't have the whole picture. They see something in you that you don't see. But the imposter syndrome is rampant amongst particularly senior executives, because we've all been conditioned to believe that those people in those positions are supposed to know what they're doing.
Sure.
And one of the interesting things I do with my executive academy is I ask them, what does a C-suite person actually do? And they go through a whole bunch of stuff, all the canned language that we're supposed to leave about what they do. And the answer finally being is nothing. They do nothing. I'm gonna leave you with that because that's deep. But they finally get it. That the minute I say it, they just pounce on me with both feet. That can't be right. Why is one sitting up there making $7 million a year and he does nothing? I said, just think about it. But the bottom line is, we don't put people in those positions for what they can do. It's what they can get done. It's for what they can get done through other people.
Mm-hmm.
So if a widget company, you ask the CEO, how many widgets did you make today? The answer is none. Because my job is to do nothing.
Right.
My job is to see that all the rest of the team is operating at their best. That is a big shift in the way people think about positions.
Big, yeah, that's huge.
But when you have a position like that, there's an expectation that you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, they will say, I show up, stuff is coming at me, I don't have a clue what to do about it. I ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
I bring people in from my organization. They fill in the blanks for me. I hire consultants to give me a different perspective. Everything that I need to know comes, or that I wind up knowing, comes from other people. That is a part of the beauty of being an effective executive, is that you don't have all the answers. So the imposter syndrome is rampant, and part of my job is to help them to understand you don't have the whole picture. Someone sees something in you that you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
Please accept that they're right and you may not be fully right.
Yeah. You've got to accept that you're in this position. You're not expected to have all the answers necessarily, right? Because you've got a team of advisors, you've got the board to go to, you've got all these different people that you can go to for advising, mentorship, information, right? You're not going to have you got to get information from your subordinates as well.
Yeah.
It's almost like that executive's job is to leverage people.
Yeah.
Right.
Relationships, Michael. It's all about relationships.
Yeah.
As I tell them all the time, you ever watch a CEO, and I do this a lot. I'm sitting in their office and something will come up. Someone could say, David, we need to fix X, Y, or Z. David look through his Rolodex, pull out a number, make a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Bob, can you help us with that? And this may be another CEO of another company, but they've got the relationship so that they can solve problems in 10 minutes that would take the average person 2 weeks to solve.
Mm-hmm.
They can solve it because they got a relationship with the person who has the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so all they do is develop these relationships so they can very quickly move through problem solving without having to go through the strain and stress of doing all that research and everything. Somebody knows the answer. Their job is to make sure that they know and are known by the people who have the answers to whatever they're challenged with. Which is, by the way, going back to what I was talking about, that's how most of them found me. The CEO, really seriously. I remember I had done some work for Coca-Cola, and then I started working. I got called into Georgia Power, and I asked him, "How'd you find me?" Well, Carl Worth sits on my board, and I asked him, "Who should I be talking to?" And your name came up. That's the story of my practice. That's how it works.
There's no subtle irony there, is there? I don't have the answer to this question. I need to talk to someone to help me figure out why I don't have the answers, but I don't know who to talk to. I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting.
That's great. James, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're coming up here at the top of the hour. Is there anything that you are dying to chat about that we haven't touched upon thus far?
We've touched on a lot, and the one thing that I encourage all of my coaching clients to do is to get in touch with who they are. The very first question I asked them, and it's part of my vetting. A lot of people say, "Well, I'm going to hire you as a coach." I said, "No, you're not until I decide that this is a good match." So the first question I asked them as part of the vetting is, "Who do you think you are?" What I'm looking for is take a moment, sit back, think about what your strengths, your weaknesses, and most importantly, what are your gifts and talents? And are all of those things being put to good effect in the role that you're playing? If they're not, that's where we're going to start. We're going to start figuring out what's getting in your way of you using your gifts and talents to the benefit of the role that you're playing in your organization. And believe me, that winds up being sometimes a 3-day conversation because it's the first time many of them have been asked that. Who do you think you are? I know a lot of people tell you who they think you are. I want to know, who do you think you are? Because that self-introspection is the basis of a good coaching relationship.
Yeah.
I remember Marshall told me one time, he says, the value of a good coaching relationship is less about the coach and more about the coachee. So if it's going to be effective, that's why I vet so very tightly. I don't coach it. I won't coach everybody who asks me to.
Yeah.
I want to know that they're ready, willing, and able to be coached, and that we can have the kind of relationship so we can be fully open kimono with each other so that we can actually make progress. That's really what I want to share with anybody who's interested in the coaching process.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. Being coached is infinitely more work than hiring a consultant to tell you what to do.
No doubt.
Different things. Yeah, that's good. This has been great, James. I appreciate you making time here. Where can our viewers and listeners find you online?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn under James Rodgers. I also have a website. It's being redone now because jamesorodgers.com. Also, thediversitycoach.com. And you can reach me at my office at 770-331-3246. I am interested in anyone who wants to make progress. The name of the book is How to Create Real Change. As one of my old consulting partners used to say, I'm interested in those who are serious, not just curious. I know a lot of things that I said, people would get curious about it and say, boy, I really wish I understood what he meant by that. But I want you to be serious. There's work to be done. We have a process by which you can do it. So if you're serious, give us a call.
I love it. The book is Diversity Training That Generates Real Change. It's available on Amazon. Go get it today. We'll have links to the book, James, links to your website, and everything else that you mentioned. We'll include those on the show notes for this. James Rodgers, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and this has been a great conversation.
Thank you, Michael. And Michael, be you, be Michael.
I'm going to do my best. I appreciate it.
You're on a good path. I can feel it coming.
Thank you, brother. I
Good.
appreciate it. Thank you
Thank
to our
you.
viewers and listeners for paying attention, for giving us your attention. That's the most valuable thing that you guys have to offer us. So thank you for that. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.